Did they prompt you what this conversation, potentially in part, what this conversation is going to be about, Jim? They just want to
No.
recap your experience from Italy because we had our sort of recap episode. It doesn't have to be exclusively about that, but they wanted to see your perspective, considering, considering what you went through, the kind of stuff that you picked out to be like, "Whoa, that was pretty cool." Again, it doesn't have to be exclusively about that, but that we wanted to tap you on the shoulder and get your perspective.
Oh, that
Other
yeah,
than that, we can just shoot the shit,
that's easy. I have plenty to talk about.
Yeah, I figured you have a lot to talk about, and of course we were all part of it, so we'll have a lot to say, all of us.
Yeah.
Hold on, let me put on my do not disturb shit.
Eric, how weird is it to be back in Oregon?
I mean, like, I was telling this to Shawn offline. I think it was like before we left or whatever, or maybe after we got back. I was going through something that I thought that by stepping away from work, stepping away from here would clear my mind about it. There's like this feeling of melancholy and malaise. And I thought it's probably because I'm a bit burnt out, probably because I'm a bit sort of like overwhelmed, or I haven't figured out exactly what I wanted to do next. And so going to Italy was going to be a nice sort of like palate cleanser. It was nice, but it was a distraction because after I came back, the same sort of, not cloud, but like, what is next for me? What is the thing that I want to do that really gets me up in the morning, even though I'm not having whatever, I'm looking at my calendar and it's not necessarily blowing my skirt up. What is that thing? So it's back. But I think it's been, I just come to realize that, like, rather than going like, hey, universe, what do you want to do? Instead of doing that, I'm just going to be like, fuck it, I'm going to go try something else, because I think that's the most, you sort of create your own energy, as opposed to like waiting for the next thing to come and fall into your lap. So to answer your question, getting back, just the mental state of mind, I think I'm still in Italy, emotionally, psychologically.
That's how I feel.
Right. But physically, I'm not exactly sure. I mean, I've acclimated, my body clock is back. The jet lag is pretty much gone. I'm like, it's weird. I'm getting up at 4:15, 4:30 in the morning. And I realized, oh, wait, that's the time I typically get up. I thought it was jet lag because I completely forgotten. But I'm like, oh, I was up at 4:30 in the morning in Italy. And I was like, this is weird, even with jet lag. And I get home and I'm still up at the same time.
Eric, I'm mailing you these. I pulled them out to mail to you.
Appreciate it. You don't have to, Shawn.
No, I don't mind. I mean, they're the same thing you have. They're just different brand, but same dosage and everything, ingredients.
The fascinating thing about that is, like, even after taking that, I still slept only until 4:30. What it did was extend my sleep into 4:30.
And that's
you know
what
what I mean?
Yeah. It's not a narcotic. Like, you're not gonna fucking. It's not like it's like Ambien, and you're just gonna be comatose.
Yeah. How about you, Jim?
I sent Jason and Mo a fucking box of weed as a thank you.
Did you? That's awesome.
And he got it yesterday. I was like, thanks so much, dude. I'm like, hey, man, thank you, for letting me. I call myself the bastard stepchild of a set. I'm like, just tagging along and not a business official member of the crew, but like an extended family member of the crew.
That's a good way of putting it.
I think every family requires that guy that's on the outside looking in and going like, you guys are all fucked up. There's a fucked up family you guys have going. All right, let's get started.
All right.
Are you guys ready?
Joining?
No. Mateo can't. His girlfriend had a doctor's appointment. He had to watch his son.
Oh shit. Okay.
And we talked about pushing it later in the week, but he can't tomorrow. And then I actually have a funeral I got to go to all of a sudden, so I won't be able to do it. And then Mateo's going to be on vacation, so we're just going to do it today like this.
We're just going to go.
All good.
All right, here we go.
This is the INKPULP podcast.
I keep saying it, but that intro gets better and better. I think we could trim about, how long is that intro? It says here 12 seconds. I think we could trim about like 11 seconds of that. I'd still like it.
Eric's here.
I'd still like it even more. All right, this is episode 142, isn't it?
No, 137.
Ah,
you just
just
threw a number out there.
I did. It felt good. 142.
You're living in the
With
future.
confidence.
You're
130, 137 of the INKPULP podcast. I am your I'm the pilot that sits in the jump seat of the Jumbo International Flying Jumbo Jet. Thank you for joining us, the five of you. The six, actually today without Mateo here, we'll get into that in a bit, but without Mateo and his paid for bots, I think we're going to go back down to the three viewers.
Dude,
wait, Eric, you're underestimating my draw as a creator.
Oh, well,
yeah,
listen.
Eric, I was going to say,
here's the difference, Jim. You don't have to pay for.
I'm bringing in 13 people.
Not have to pay for the audience that Mateo brings to the table. Before we get that,
organic growth.
What do you call it? Let's all welcome to his own podcast, Mr. Shawn INKPULP. Crystal, Shawn, thank you for putting on the clown show that never ends. But to class up the joint with his millions and millions of followers, the international artist superstar himself, the guy who kept every ferry afloat while we were in Italy, the guy who made every bite of gelato taste that much more sweeter, that much more fulfilling, the guy who made every piece
creamier.
every
Why? The show's already over. The show's over.
Every slice of pizza tastes like it was the first time that we ate it. Mr. Jim MAHFOOD. Thank you for joining us, Jim.
Guys, thanks for having me. And to start it all off, Italian Prosecco.
Oh, dude, are you drinking it every day, Jim?
Just about, but I wanted to let you guys know. So
what?
Italian Prosecco, delicious little Italian cigars.
You still have some left?
I do. Tom Ford custom Italian eyewear.
Dude, tell me you've worn them since you got home.
Sergio Topi.
Where'd you get that?
And Milo Manara. These are the Italian things that I'm here to educate everyone about that you guys.
There you go.
You've never heard of Manara, you've never heard of Topi. I'm here to let you guys let you know what's going on.
A revelation. He's going to spread this new Topi artist like a disease.
Right. There's these new kids on the block. One of them's named Manera. You don't know his work, but
and we're going to talk about our Italian adventures, man. Thank you for joining us at that show, by the way. I know you always credit it, so like you kind of like snuck in with the luggage, but I think the luggage snuck in with you, you know, so thank you for joining us. It made it that much more fun, honestly. And I don't know how you felt about this. I brought this up the last time that we talked about it. It was sometime last week.
Right.
At least for me, you tell me your experience. For me, the convention or the what would you say, the art festival was more of icing on the cake as far as my personal experience there. I mentioned that my wife and I hadn't gone on vacation in about 5 years since our kids were born, but it was sort of a nice, you know, I think jewel on the crown when it came to that whole Italian experience. Obviously, or maybe not so obvious, because I was really I have a look of just contempt for you guys every time I see you together. You know what I mean? So it might not be obvious that I'm enjoying your guys' company, right? And by the way, often like 90% of it is towards Shawn and just splashes onto you because you guys were almost handcuffed together the entire show. So an apology, Jim. I want to apologize if I came off as like, you know, hateful towards you. It's not really towards you.
Not at all.
Talking about?
Not at all. It was
0% to you.
I had to tell, like, when Aaliyah showed up to our Airbnb, I had to tell Aaliyah, I'm like, hanging out with me and Shawn is basically going to be like hanging out with like a gay couple. We order dishes together so that we can experience different meals. We, you know, smoke cigars together on the patio every morning overlooking beautiful Lake Como. And he just started laughing. And I'm like, no, this is like, I'm not really even joking about this. How the trip was
I think Aaliyah hasn't gotten used to the kind of humor that we have until he realizes, oh, these dum-dums are not joking.
Right. And also, but I mean, that was one of the best things about our group with the trip was I felt like everyone really gelled well together, and especially the guys. It's like there's going to be so much shit talking over these 2 weeks that if you can't handle it, like you should just bounce now. Like you should just leave now, because this is going to be inappropriate humor, shit talking,
Yeah.
sensory overload type experience for the next 2 weeks. And that's kind of what we did. And that's what I was going into it, hoping for.
That's
I
awesome.
needed that because, like, in general, I'm basically alone drawing all day.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I hang out with a couple people once or twice a week in Portland, and then I'm alone. So to refresh and to be able to go to this beautiful country, eat the most indulgent meals and drink and have this incredible experience, it was like a reset button, you know.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
But the group was great. I mean, I felt like everyone gelled well together. You don't know what you're going to get when you're traveling suddenly with like a dozen people.
Yeah, we were not a small group. There was a good bit of us.
You know, and as far as the art festival itself goes, I felt like that was just like being at summer camp with the best artists in the world, is how I described it. It was just kind of a 2-day, 3 days if you count the Friday night opening ceremony, but basically 3 days of like, oh, holy shit, there's Liberatore, there's Monera. I'm in line waiting for food with Shawn, and we're chatting with Kevin Eastman and Simon Bisley. It was like, what is happening now? Okay, so
wait, pause, Jim, pause. Well, we need to reel it back. Let's put some order and structure into this podcast. Let's start from the beginning.
Yeah.
So Jim, I had my ticket direct Atlanta to Milan, and Eric, you and I were trying to coordinate, and this is when you were going to fly on the same plane as Jason, and it didn't make sense for me, and it was way too much money. Sure. So I just got a direct. So Jim was able to get a flight from Portland to Atlanta to have a layover, and he had a substantial layover, and then he booked the same plane as me from Atlanta to Milan, which happened to be the same plane that Brian Stelfreeze and Cully Hamner were on too.
Yes.
So the trip started with me heading down to the airport like 5 hours early, so that Jim and I could get the party going.
Yeah, we ate chicken wraps in some weird restaurant in the Atlanta airport. But it was surreal, man, because I woke up at 3 a.m. in Portland to make a 6 a.m. flight. So for me, this trip already started off like surreal, because I slept for like 4 hours, woke up, got to the airport. Everything worked out great. The flights were all on time. Seeing you in Atlanta, I was like, okay, now the trip is happening. Now this shit's official. And then, you know, we get on the plane to Milan, and immediately
Jim and I picked seats right behind each other.
Yeah, I'm sitting right behind Shawn, and I immediately take some things from Shawn to make the trip easier. I'll just put it like that.
I took a lot of drugs. I'll put it like that.
Okay, yeah, you can just blatantly say
Jim
it.
took other things, but I took a lot of drugs.
See, Jim is trying to protect your channel. You're like, screw this channel. I don't care if it.
Right. So, but yeah, the flight was great. I immediately was tapped on the shoulder, though, before the flight took off, and was like, hey, can you give up your seat to this girl that wants to sit next to her fiance? I was like, it's fine. But luckily,
They're on their honeymoon.
Yes.
They just got married.
And I was rewarded with a cup this big of champagne from one of the stewardesses. She just brought back this big paper cup, and I'm like, I guess I'll drink this with the things that I just ingested. And I drank it, and then I was out for like the first.
By the way, to be
3
fair, let me give that context. That right there is thematically, I think, Jim's entire experience when he was in Italy with us. Not the idea of like, I guess I'll insert whatever the heck Shawn has like ordered off of the menu. Like Jim was kind of traveling. I'll say that he was kind of traveling pretty conservatively. Like, hey, I'll taste this. I want to taste this. I want to taste like little tiny things. You were down to do that. But Shawn did not have that agenda at all. If it was like, if there was poisonous dragon on the menu, Shawn would have been like, oh, and then I will take the sack of venom with that as well. Jim would be like, he'd look around. I think a couple of times I called off, like, save me from this. That was that look, like, like you
Yeah.
wanted like intervention, like, hey man, no, Shawn, eat the dragon and the venom sack on your own.
Right.
Jim is okay with like a hamburger, but
Yeah.
since nobody picked up on it fast enough, Shawn was just like like it was almost like shoveling food into Jim's mouth. I remember the first time that I was witness to it. Well, I saw it a bunch of times, but the most notable one was when we went to. Well, we had this really, we'll get back to your story. We had this really great outside cafe near our hotel, and Shawn, like, if he was the predator, like there was a laser hooked up to his forehead, it just laser beamed into this tomahawk of a steak,
Oh, that was.
and he turns to you and goes, Jim, tomahawk. And you were just like, and I was like, oh, I get it. Jim is like, help, danger, nobody bailed you out. And so he just ordered it. And this side, what I thought was like a side of a cow came to the table. And the look on your face, it was like you enjoyed it because it tastes really good. But the daunting thing where you're like, I have to eat half a cow now.
Yes.
Now, to your point, Eric, because you're not wrong.
Yeah.
To your point, like Jim says, he took some things and then was given a glass of a giant cup of champagne. And
Sure.
in his mind, he's like, "Oh, I guess I'm having this." Where
That's
like,
it.
the difference is with me, I took all the things Jim took plus some, and had planned on 2 glasses of red wine with it
Right.
to knock
Right.
me out.
No,
So
and I know it wasn't even see his sort of like trepidation ends in a question mark. Yours like it's stamped with an exclamation point. You're like, I'm taking this, like Jim is like, I'm taking this, and then it's like, I think that's the if I had to Venn diagram your guys' attitude the entire trip, it was like, oh, Shawn's, it's the same kind of concept, but Jim is more like maybe not,
Right.
Anyway, continue, Jim. Giant glass.
Giant glass of champagne, was knocked out for a good part of the trip, which was great. And then this older Italian stewardess who brought me the champagne was like my biggest fan. And every time I'd go back to the plane to use the restroom, she'd be like, do you need anything extra? I just think it's so nice what you did. And I'm like, it was just the normal, decent thing anybody would do. But she
No,
brought
hold
me
on.
extra dessert. When I was leaving the plane, she brought me a clear bag of all the little liquor bottles that you get on a plane, and good shit too, right, Shawn? Like whiskeys,
Woodford,
vodka, gin, and I'm like, oh, okay. So,
well,
it was nice to be appreciated before even landing.
Yeah,
In Italy, it
Jim
was.
was a superstar on the plane. The stewardess came up to me after he moved. Now Jim moved way to the back of the plane where we were more central originally, and so she came up to me and she was like, "Oh my God, your friend is so nice. That was the nicest thing, and now this couple can sit together." And she was just all about Mr. MAHFOOD.
I think that if there is sort of like a shining star to the trip, we realize what a freaking rock star Jim is, and if there were coattails to ride, Jim's was the appropriate one.
Absolutely.
Now, keep in mind, we were in very celebrated company. Jim said Brian Stelfree, or you said Brian Stelfree, you said Coley Hannon, but we were there with, with Mateo, but grain of salt, right? We were there with like Dave Johnson. We were there with a bunch of people from our crew. But I think Jim, as an addition to us hanging out, was a nice breath of fresh air because I didn't know what to expect. But Jim's down for everything. If you had said, here's what a +1 kind of guy Jim is. If Shawn had said, dude, let's go beat the hell out of that shark, Jim would be like, why just one shark? You know what I mean? Like he enabled you. Why not just why beat the hell out of it? Why not pull its teeth out first, then beat the hell out of it? And Shawn was just like a big kid, which is amazing. Let me highlight this. Because you had never gone on a trip like that, Jim. Shawn had been there a couple of times, but knowing Shawn's personality as it is, it was so, and I said this last time, it was so great to see you guys together because everything was such an experience. I'm not diminishing that. to be so cynical and almost like dead inside like I am, to watch you guys be so enthusiastic about everything. I literally we ended up in Bellagio, and we get out and we were in an alleyway. I swear to God, it's as close to like we're gonna get jumped. That's where my cynical brain was. Like, this looks like an alleyway where they throw out buckets of piss. You guys were so excited, like you were looking at the alleyway. I was like, have you ever seen an alleyway like this before? And I was like, holy shit, these guys, But anyway, that's what I appreciated the most.
Photos in this alleyway.
Yeah, exactly. That's the first thing that came to mind. We're like, let's take a photo in a super dangerous alleyway where they throw buckets of piss on us.
Yes. Well, here's the thing, though. The lead up to this trip and to just hanging out is Shawn and I started hanging out at conventions. We're trying to figure it out like 5 or 6 years ago. Like I knew Shawn and Mateo, and I would see them at shows and like say hello or give them the nod or whatever. And then we just started hanging out and clicked immediately. Yeah. And so the precursor to Italy was the last 3 or 4 years, whenever we all do conventions, we're together all the time outside of the convention. And Shawn became the known go-to leader of picking out restaurants, knowing where to go.
Social organizer, if you will.
Mike Huddleston dubbed him the sensualist. Oh shit, we lost.
Keep going.
Leader.
The sensualist is what he became known as. So knowing and trusting this man's, judgment as far as like great places to eat, where to go, that just kind of led into the Italy trip of, I'm just going to say yes to most things. And like whatever direction Shawn's going to go in, I'm just going to go ahead and follow that and see where this goes. But I don't need to order like the extra dessert if I don't want it. I can just have part of what Shawn's experiencing and then do my thing and step back when needed. But overall, the direction he's going in, I feel like didn't miss out. It was he picked most of our.
You look quite pleased with yourself, Shawn. You were just smiling ear to ear
on your screen. Your screen just went red, Eric.
Can't stand it so much.
But Eric, you saw that you saw the Airbnb that Shawn picked out for us. It was quite amazing to
I mean, it's an act, but there was no way to avoid the overall awe and sort of like just humble the way Italy humbles me. And I don't know if it's the same for you. It's so relaxing to be there.
Yes.
It's so amazing to be in those spaces. Let's talk about that Airbnb real quick. By the way, did we skip anything? I know that. Well, we skipped the whole, what do you call it? We skipped the whole your time in Parma. So we'll get back to that in a minute. But that Airbnb is what a great sort of like experience being there. It sounds so simple to just rent out a place and just hang out, but your guys' view, where you guys were in, was it Chernobyl, right? It was like the stone's throw away from a church, about a 10-minute walk into the town that has a bunch of little great nook and cranny restaurants that I suspect that you guys were all into during our time there. But yeah, so here's where my cynical mind goes. Okay, you guys told me this story, so follow up on this if you can. The lady who rented the place out to you, it's a 3-story, 4-story sort of setup. I think it's closer to 3, right? And she introduces you guys. I mean, she walks you guys. She tours the place for you. Here's the kitchen. Here's the blah. Here's the blah. And because of the nature of Airbnb, sort of like, contracts or whatever it is, they opt for, hey, let's make sure that the people renting this out are safe. And they specifically point to a set of stairs that goes up to, I don't know where, but I looked at it going like, no, that was a good idea, lady. Tell these guys to not. So I think it was like, don't go up these set of stairs, because it is not very safe, or it's against sort of Airbnb's sort of overall safety, like all of those things. But I looked at it and I was like, yeah, no, I'm deathly afraid of heights to begin with. But the idea that there's like, it wasn't even an incline like this. It was like this. It was like straight up into a ceiling.
Let me pepper what you just said, because the lady, while she said you can't go up here, we're not allowed to have anyone up here, blah, 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 she says, but this is my favorite part of the house. That's how she, right, Jim? She tied that in there. It was like,
I
this.
missed her saying that.
Oh, okay,
I
yeah. She
think
said
that's Shawn like just imagining it. That's the thing. I think that's what Shawn. So here's I think this is where Shawn picked this up. So and here's the part that really made me go like, if you don't want to go, if you don't want people to go up there, do something that's prohibitive, right? So she goes, don't go up there. You guys tell me the story, and I take a look at this barricade. It's effectively a baby gate.
Yes.
You know, it's like an accordion baby gate. That I go like, if
With no
you
lock.
don't want people to go up there, don't put the thing that they can, that they can get. It's not that much of a security. There's not even a sign that says, please don't go up there in Italian or whatever it is. So I think that's where Shawn built it up in his head. He saw the baby gate and he said, like, that must be her favorite place.
Well, listen, as soon as she left, even Dave Johnson was like, we're going up there. Like, as soon as she left the property, we all went up there like
it
little
was the first thing we did.
and, Eric, when you and Cassandra were visiting the house, even Cassandra was like, well, I'm going up there to look.
Yeah.
And it was just one of those things of, you tell even grown people not to do something and then they're immediately going to do it. So,
Well, to be
But
fair, I'm
it was-
just an overgrown child anyway.
I was gonna say, like, it's on, like, for Shawn, it's because it's on brand for him, like being a big kid. And I think for my wife, it's just like she's such a contrarian. If you tell her not to go do something, she's gonna be like, "Fuck you, I'm gonna go do it." You know.
right. Well,
Okay, so we skipped all of Parma
so
for
we
you, Jim.
land.
What was that? What was that like?
Parma was awesome because I knew that it was going to be more of a smaller, town, Mateo's hometown. So
Yeah.
very beautiful there. We had incredible meals there. Seeing Mateo's home and studio was mind blowing.
Enough
all
of
the
that,
art,
right?
all the art he has hanging up. I asked him, I'm like, can I video in here? And he's like, sure, of course. So I'm videoing his studio and all of his art and posting it on my Instagram stories.
I'm gonna make a post of that.
And I was getting DMs from people that are like, are you in an art gallery? Like, where are you? I'm like, I'm in Matteo Scalero's studio in Italy, where there's original, topies on the wall, and just a beautiful, inspiring space, man. I love seeing other artists' studios and workspaces anyway, but to see Mateo, who, even though we talk so much shit about each other, obviously Mateo is one of the most talented people out there right now. Super successful. Couldn't be more proud of him. The dude deserves everything that he's got. And to see this beautiful workspace that he had constructed, it was like, this is something to aspire to, man. This is incredible. This is amazing.
We talked about that during the podcast. Let's not forget that we shot an episode of INKPULP in Mateo's studio, right in the loft of his studio, and we talked about how the point that you brought up, Jim, which is like, this is something to inspire to, but also to give us a chance to reflect, to be like, remember where we were all, we've known each other for easily a decade now, decade plus, right? So remember where we were 10 years back when, this space was not even a thought in our minds, to be like having original pieces of art, books and books upon, like Mateo had some stuff in there that made me like, holy crap, that's an old book. That's a vintage book that he somehow managed to get around. He also had a ton of his own books, which is really fucking annoying. You know what I mean? Like, what a waste of space to like have a library of your own books populating at least 2/3 of your bookshelf. I thought like, whoa, look at this shit. And then I looked and I was like, oh, it's Black Science. Fuck this shit. I'm like, where's the good stuff?
Beautiful
But it is
hardcovers.
yeah, his own hardcovers. Look at the
Right.
ego on this piece of shit. So like, what I really loved is the fact that we could look back and go, where were we 10 years ago? Where were we 12 years, 15 years ago? And where are we now? Where we're shooting an episode of INKPULP podcast in Italy, in this guy's studio with all of this amazing original art up. He has like, his setup is really amazing, not just the studio itself, but the house, But although I remember driving up to that house, and the drive up to it was like that's like out of a movie, and how genuinely disappointed Shawn was that the original house of intent was not the house of destination. Like we were driving up to the house and you're like, do you live there? And then Mateo goes, no, I live over here. And Shawn was like, oh, okay, we'll deal with that, I guess, So he's still. What I was saying is that as good as he has it, he still has plenty to go. You know,
Right,
like
right.
And then
He needs to build a separate
he
house.
needs to step. He needs to step it up. He was basically living in a shed in the backyard of that house that we were all sort of awe inspired by.
Yeah. But dude, Parma was great, and Shawn and I were sharing this cool little quaint hotel room together. And every morning, you know, we'd go to breakfast and get the handmade cappuccino, the croissants. There was some gorgeous Italian girls working at our hotel. And so just the trip, I mean, it started off from the beginning, like, okay, this is a totally different experience. And then getting to actual Como was like, oh shit, well now we're in like paradise.
right.
This is
Well, let me say
next
real
level.
quick. So at the little inn we were staying in, Jim's right. There were these beautiful Italian women working the inn there and making our cappuccinos, and so like we're both like look at them like God, they're gorgeous, and they said the just the language and the accent, like just smitten. And so I'm like, oh man, I wonder, she's probably digging on Jim. And we're just talking about this for like the first day, and then by the second day we're walking out and we're saying ciao, and I'm like, oh wait, we're the gay couple.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
Shawn,
yeah.
we're one of those couples that like looks alike.
Yes,
You
yes.
know when couples look alike? It's very strange. It's like, oh, these two bearded, dark gay men. And one of them's wearing a Hawaiian shirt. They're definitely gay.
I'm like, Jim, I think she likes you. And then the day later, wait, she thinks we're gay.
Oh shit. But yeah, man.
What a great experience in Parma. The dinners there were amazing. We ended up talking a
Amazing.
tiny bit about the last day we were in the cellar and Mateo had put together
Mateo
that
put
whole
together the
setup.
whole Parma wing of the trip.
Oh yeah, yeah. I
He-
think Mateo, like, he knows the entire town. I don't know of a single place that we went to where Mateo wasn't familiar with somebody or they were familiar with him. But really, really lovely
the mayor
town.
of
And
Parma.
say again.
He's the mayor of Parma.
I think so. I
Yeah.
think so. I think he's either that or he's the mob boss of Parma, you know, where they just rolled out.
right.
He just rolled out the freaking red carpet for us. Amazing dinners there. That was the dinner that Ilya and the other Mateo
Mateo Loli.
joined us at. Loli was there and he was hanging out for a tiny bit. He just had, by the way, if you're listening to this, dude, congratulations on the new baby.
Congrats.
Lovely kid, you know, super duper small. We had an opportunity to meet her. I don't recall if I ever got that.
Her.
Yes, her.
Lily has a baby.
Yeah, so
girl.
gorgeous baby. Congratulations to the both of you. All the best of health, all the best of luck and future with that baby. But listen, I'll tell you this. Before you had that kid, you should have reached out to me. I'm talking to Loli now, you know, because you are never going to sleep again ever in your life. If you just wanted to see what it was like, I'll send you my kids. You know, I'll send you my kids and I told this to Ilya. Like, all of Ilya's friends are starting to have kids now.
Don't
By
do
the way,
it.
Ilya,
Don't do it.
and I was telling Ilya, listen, if you're starting to have thoughts, you and your girlfriend are like, hey, maybe it's time. There's a body, you know, my body clock is ticking. Call me. I'll FedEx my kids to you. You know, I'll put them on, you know, it'll cost you $0. I'll put them on a giant box, send them to you, and it will definitely, you can definitely decide. Don't look at it through other people's kids in which you only have like 2 or 3 hours worth of contact. Stay with them for a while. And I bet you'll form a very, very different opinion.
Man.
Anyway, congratulations. Congratulations, Loli.
Either way, congratulations.
Yeah, congratulations, Loli. You're never gonna sleep again.
New, though. I mean, that kid's
Oh yeah.
months
Oh
old.
yeah. I was genuinely surprised. They joined us again when we were in Como. I was genuinely surprised to see the baby there because it was so brand new. We're talking about it like it's a car. It's like a child. You know, it's like it's newborn. I don't know what they have. I don't know what the nuances are when it comes to Italy, but I remember when my kids were getting born and my wife would not let those kids outside for whatever reason, you know, because she was just like overly protective of them. I guess they just raised it more robust there. They started feeding it like spaghetti, you know, right off the bat. It was having red wine right off the bat.
Baby drank Prosecco with me. It was
on the bottle.
Yeah. And the baby, as a matter of fact, picked up the tab a couple times. That's how hardcore that baby was. Jokes aside, congratulations, Loli. Congratulations to Leah for not having kids.
Yes.
Anyway, continue.
But man, that Parma dinner too was great because I got to sit next to the great Brian Stelfreeze and
Oof.
shoot the shit with him. I've met him and talked to him before, but I definitely got to know him more.
Oh, I didn't realize that, Jim. I thought
And I didn't realize like he's a lot goofier than I thought he would
Oh,
be.
dude.
I mean that in a positive way, but like
Yeah,
we
absolutely.
were joking around, we were talking
Yeah,
shit.
Brian's
And I always saw him more as this elder statesman, scholarly.
He
he
still
is
is.
that too.
He
He
is
is
that.
that.
Yeah.
But
But
he has
with
a playful side for sure.
this trip, I was like, okay, he's just a guy. Like I can
Yeah,
talk to him
Brian's
and
got a
joke
fun
with
sense of
him.
humor. It's fun to joke around with him.
And but I mean, he's one of those guys that when I hang out with him, I remember seeing his work when I was like 13, 14 years old and being blown away. So
Yeah.
that frame of reference happens, whereas like the same thing hanging out with Art Adams in Como and being tabled right next to Art Adams, that's a trip for me because I mean I was crazy for his shit
Me
as
too.
early as 12
Me
years
too.
old. I had the
Yes.
X-Men annuals and the Gumby one shots he did at Kamiko.
Yes, he was my
And
first favorite artist, and
he
to this day is always in my top 10.
so
Can
did
I say
he,
that? Is this the same for you guys? Like, we've become accustomed to hanging out with the kinds of people that who we hang out with. I mean, just saying like, "Oh, Dave Johnson went up a set of stairs because somebody told him not to," or like saying, "Oh yeah, Mateo Scalera took us out all to dinner." But I'm trying to step back from our situation, enough so that I can kind of get a full frame of the position that we are in life now. And we are really like really amazing privileged place. We have those points of reference to be able to look at, to be able to say, yo, I collected Art Adams from way back in the day, and Brian Stelfreeze just like over there goofing and all that kind of stuff. But if you really take a step back and go, like, a lot of people in our industry, especially those that are really zoned in on like who are the exceptional, exemplary individuals, right? We are hanging out with a lot of those people, right?
Absolutely.
We are those are just the kind of people that we're breaking bread with, and I want to thank them for not making us feel like complete outsiders. The other one, and I don't want to lose track of this, like, a guy who I don't talk to enough is Collie Hanmer.
yeah.
Even though multiple times we've been able to sit with each other at shows, right? In this case, we always had breakfast because for whatever reason, our time, with our body clocks always woke us up at the same time, and we'd end up at the hotel, at the whole hotel breakfast area, hotel restaurant, and in those conversations, I got a chance. Like, Cully has been working in the comic book industry for a
Yeah,
while, and
long
his
time.
impact,
Yeah, man.
people don't understand the invisible nature of his work and how much of his work they end up reading, or how much his work has end up they've been exposed to. One of which is
Yeah,
when they launched New 52,
yeah, Cully
how both
designed
Jim and Cully designed that entire launch,
Yep,
for those heroes.
yep,
And people, I don't know if people understood or even knew that, or how important that is.
yeah,
And the great part about that, I think, just generally in Colley's personality, is he's incredibly humble about the whole thing.
absolutely.
He's not the guy that's like, I did this and I did this and I deserve more and blah blah blah. As a matter of fact, sometimes he talks himself down to the point. I'm like, dude, you've been working for a while.
Yeah,
You've been like, you have impacted so many people, if not directly, definitely indirectly. And the fact that you can sit here and be like, I don't know, maybe my work isn't, he's really sort of dialed in to this idea that maybe his work isn't as how do I put this sort of like strategic? Like, it's
sexy.
not like we were all going into Como, right? And he saw the guest list for Como and he's like, I don't know what I'm doing here, He's like, dude, are you freaking kidding me? You're that guy, You
Yeah.
deserve to be here as much as the next set of people,
Absolutely.
But anyway, Cully, thank you so much for tolerating me and during those breakfasts. Thank you for being so open during the conversation. Same thing to Brian's, just being a regular dude, as Jim refers to him.
Yeah, man. It was, like I said, it was a good group, and it was fun being roommates with Dave Johnson as well. Like I've
Yeah.
known Dave for a long time now and got to know him well when I lived in LA, and I would do drink and draw every Thursday with him and Panocean and Jeff Johnson. And so I knew what I was kind of getting into with Dave. And
Oh
Dave
yeah,
was
sure.
kind of like the more serious older brother to Shawn and I, like, you know.
The much more serious older brother.
But I mean that in a good
It's not
way.
to say that he has it's not to say he doesn't have his fun side, but between the two, it's like watching. I can Dave to like a really serious cartoon. You know what I mean? Where I'm like, oh, holy crap, that's really interesting. That works on multiple levels, not just on the entertainment value, but obviously the quality of animation, but also there's subtext here that grown-ups can pick up on. The two of you are like Ed, Ed, and Eddie. It's just a lot of unregulated. Nobody's watching us right now, so therefore we can just do whatever the hell I want. And I think it's just like by proxy you're that, Jim. But when Shawn gets unleashed, oh, by the way, compliments to Shawn. Shawn kept as for 2 days in Parma. Shawn, I made note of it. I'm like, hey, Shawn is really like reserved right now. I think that's by design. He was like, oh, can I have that croissant? You know, he was like really proper.
I was a little British boy.
Yeah, those croissants look delicious. You know, like he was really reserved, really sort of like under control. But I swear, when we crested over that hill to go into Como, actually a little bit before, I saw the fake patinas start to crack when we pulled over to the gas station to sort of
yeah,
like take a break.
yeah.
And Shawn was just like, look at this cup that says Fratello on it. Isn't this? I was like, yeah, he couldn't hold it together for that long. Celebrate the fact that he held it together for 2 days, you know? But as soon as those cups came out, Shawn was like, nope, it's not in my nature.
That
And then especially
elaborate gas
the,
station, the beautiful
the,
Italian
the,
gas station.
the mask was completely off by the time we got crested the hill into Como. And that's when I saw the both of you. It was just like, oh, there's Ed, Ed, and Eddie. You know, Eddie was coming. Mateo was coming. Ed, and Eddie was on his way. Yeah.
Well, when we were leaving Parma to get in the van, this speaks to what you said about Jim earlier. I'm like, oh my God, we're gonna be in a van for a few hours. I should be properly stoned for this. So I'm like, Jim, you want to have some? And Jim's like, no, I'm good. And then I look, but I knew Mo would go with me, Mo and Jason.
Oh yeah.
Jim was stuck in the van with the.
I was just relaxed and chilling. Like I was feeling good. Also, I don't know. Like I'd never met Mo, so I was kind of like, before I get completely stoned and I'm in a car with people for 2.5 hours, let me just know people. And everyone was so easy to get along with. It was great. I mean, obviously I know Jason, but it was a thing of like the right time for edibles for me, because to me I was like, sober, not sober, this is all just fucking great experience. So I'm just here for the ride and whatever happens, you know. But all the little moments, going back to like Dave Johnson, like at night we would be around the kitchen, the living room table in our Airbnb, and we'd be looking at each other's portfolios. Dave would be drawing, and there's just these little moments of like camaraderie that stick with you. And when Peach Momoko and her husband Yo showed up, they walked to our Airbnb on like Thursday morning or Friday morning, and we had a moment where Peach and Dave and I were hanging out at the table drawing and looking at each other's work, and just these moments of like, oh man, I'm friends with like the best artists in the world. And now we're in a different country hanging out, and then we're going to go Friday night, we're going to this opening ceremony in like a castle, and you know, Mark Bodie and Manera are going to be there, and all these beautiful people and wonderful talent. And the whole thing was, whenever I do these international trips, it takes a while to like wrap my head around the experience. And it's like you said earlier, Eric, I still feel like I'm kind of there. It's weird to be back in the States after a trip like that, because for me, I'm like, why do I even live in the States? Like, why? Why, you know, every American, I'm sure, says that when they go to Como, especially, like, well, why don't I just live here?
Sure.
But it is one of those things of like, it's been good to be back and be back in the studio. I've been really inspired to work again, and I'm excited about that. But just being back in America, when I go out during the day, I'm like, oh yeah. You know,
but you're also in Portland, so, and you have to deal with all that. Like, I don't feel like I'm happy. I mean, I would love to live in Italy. Don't get me wrong, but I don't feel like, oh, I'm back in America. Like I genuinely like the area I'm in my daily life here.
Yeah.
You're ready to get the fuck out of where you live.
Yes. And this trip solidified that. I don't want to go too much into it because it's like a personal thing. I'm
Yeah.
figuring out my
Yeah.
plan. But this trip did solidify, like, oh, it's time for me to move on.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I won't even get into it, but I have a future project. I'll say I have a future project that's going to be
A very exciting project. I'll
And
say that.
on the plane ride home, this future project was more solidified, and that excites me to also be back, move on with things in life, and be like, okay, I also have a future thing
Yeah,
that
that's
I'm getting involved in, and so things are starting to line up, and this was kind of a nice. This whole trip was just a nice break before other things happen. You
Yeah.
know?
Going back to what you were talking about, Jim, that like those little tiny, I know for me, I'd say it's weird, but I take little snapshots in my head of like our situation, of us and our trip. And there are ones that stand out very clearly, but it's so insignificant and throwaway. I remember, and for whatever, and luckily, the last time that we were in Italy, and it was me, Dave, Mateo, Jeff DeCal, and Shawn, right? We ended up walking through Venice, ran out of road, and we ended up on the dock somewhere.
Yeah.
And those are the kinds of like, I had a snapshot of that in my head, right? And we happen to have a photo of it as well, of us ending up at the waterfront going like, well, I guess we got to go back the other way because we run out of road. And you guys were the ones that were sort of like the unofficial sort of, photographers during the trip because you guys were taking photos left and right. But
Yeah.
there were things like that for me on this trip when we're sitting there waiting for that. For me, it's like small little things when we were waiting for the ferries to arrive.
Yeah.
Like I'm in the back somewhere just looking, and I go like, look at this. My group of friends are hanging out, and all of us are we're not even art centric right now. We're just hanging out, trying to go into a city just to go check it. Oh, I don't want to miss the opportunity to thank Mo for effectively playing our Cub Scout mother or whatever the heck the unofficial, our den mother, unofficial title that she got, because left to Jason would be, halfway into the Como River by now,
Yeah.
Jason's excuse is always, I got us here, didn't I? I'm all like, yeah, I guess so. It's a weird defense to the most inefficient way of getting somewhere. I'll go to a story where he's like, hey, don't, when we get to Como, we all had lunch there. And he goes like, yeah, I know the good gelato place. And I'm all like, all right, I trust Jason when it comes to like what good gelato is.
Yeah.
Totally trust him implicitly 100%. But getting there, here's mind-boggling part. He actually had Google Maps on his phone, right? So he plugs it in to his it should walk him like if it didn't walk him to the front door, it would at least walk him to the general vicinity in which he goes like, oh yeah, there it is. We're a couple doors down from it or whatever. We walked in a circle easily 3 or 4 times.
Right.
You were there, Jim. Like we were like walking around. It was the event right before you guys ended up at the comic book shop. Remember, you're like, hey,
okay,
let's go have gelato first, then we'll walk together. Yeah, we'll go walk to this comic book shop and hang out. Maybe people won't recognize you because you were international superstar, Jim MAHFOOD. But like we walked in a circle 4 times, only to realize, hey, maybe this one time we should go right. And it took Mo to go, Jay, I think it's this way. And lo and behold, and to Mo says it kind of like offhandedly, hey, between me and Jason, we make one whole person, right?
Oh, yes.
But Mo's 90% of the person.
Yeah. That's like 92% of the person. So thanks to Mo for being our unofficial, undesignated den mother and hurting a bunch of, kids who were way too excited to be there. So thank you to Mo. Actually, jokes aside, thank you to Jay for helping us set it all up. It is through no small feat that he managed to sort of like stitch the things together that got us all there, not the least of which reaching out to the organizer of the Lake Como Comic Art Festival. Thank you so much to Arnaud for having us there. Thank you so much for the open invitation that he sent to us. Obviously accommodating Jim, that whole bit, that's all through Jason and Arnaud's coordination. Thank you, Jay. Thank you, Arno. Thank you,
Thank you,
Mo.
Eric, did you watch? I sent these to Shawn, but this media critic guy posted on YouTube these 2 incredible videos from
Very
Como.
professionally done.
They're
Yeah.
both about 25 minutes, and it's
Cool.
just edited shots of all the artists at Como working at their tables.
Yeah, yeah.
Did you see these?
No, I missed it. I went immediately into work mode as soon as I got home. I went into my 9 to 5 mode.
I'm
It'd
looking
be
at
great to see it though.
I'm looking at his Instagram. I can send you the link for them if you want to post it under the video or whatever. But
That'd be awesome.
they're just set to music. But like I said, it's just 2 videos of basically, I mean, all of us are in it, but just every artist. And it made me think like, oh shit, I should have walked around more. I mean, I did walk around, but
Oh, dude.
seeing the level of talent that was at Como and seeing everyone working and drawing and painting, small snippets, it was like, dude, this is like the best artists in the world over this 2-day period.
Yeah, let's talk about that really quick. And again, we
wild.
mentioned Arnaud before, but he's the guy who helped sort of organize this whole thing, put the whole thing, and I think he has this thing sort of dialed in. He understands the intent behind it, which he himself is a collector, and obviously, like, I don't know what else he does on the side, but I've met him, through the years from way back in the day. But he understands the intent. He clearly has an intent for the show, which I think is incredibly positive. The overall sort of thing is he doesn't look at the comic book artists and go like, oh, just comic books. He looks at them as artists who happen to be drawing comic books, right? And the level of appreciation and admiration that he has for that helps, I think, is one of the guiding principles that helps him decide who gets to be part of the show. He really, really, really appreciates the comic book art that's there, the artists who draw them. And that kind of signals to the other people who are like-minded from the collector slash appreciator end, right? Who ends up in attendance, because there was not one person. It was weird. I don't know if you guys recognized it, but or made note of it, but our tables had chairs in front of them, not just on our side as vendors, but in front of them, and just the kind of signal that sends out to the people who come and visit your table, which means, hey, come and sit down, come and talk to us, come and engage with these guys, because the more you engage with them, the more you kind of realize, not just from their end of the table, but how much these guys really appreciate comic book art and being here with these comic book creators. I didn't have one interaction where I go like, oh, this is weird, and I'm just talking to a belt buckle as I typically do at shows, which it's a different experience. I'm not diminishing it, but like, this thing set up a different vibe. And I want to thank Arnaud for like understanding what the freaking mission was when it comes to this thing. So to your point, Jim, I wish I had done more walking around, but I gotta be honest with you, going back to something that I said with Cully, like, there's plenty of times when I'm walking through that show, being part of it, being part of that video, where I'm like, what the fuck am I doing here? Because like, I feel like I'm interrupting some of these artists when they're working. When I go like, oh geez, man, that looks freaking awesome. And I want to loom over them, as they're banging out whatever cool sketch that they're working on or cool painting that they're working on. But I didn't have the heart to, because I'm like, I don't want to interrupt that guy. Only for somebody to tell me like, that's what they're there for. There's a reason why there's a chair. They're inviting you to engage with the artist for as long as you need them to be.
Yeah. The whole thing was a trip, man. Cause it's like, I was at my table pretty much the whole time, because I want to meet people that want to talk to me. People were sitting and going through my work with me, and I made some new friends and connections. That's great. But then you realize you only have 2 days in this incredible environment. So you also, I did want to, walk around a bit. I wound up trading some artwork with Albert Moy. I finally got to spend time with him and his awesome family.
Sure.
And all these strange, incredible things are happening, and it's all condensed into just 2 days. And then the festival's over, and all of us literally left the next day. We left on Monday. So it was kind of this very quick, dramatic, overwhelming thing to happen at the end of the trip. And then boom, I'm on the shuttle with Shawn back to the airport, and I'm like, shit, okay, I guess I'm going home.
It was very sudden.
I could have another week there or 2 weeks.
Shawn, what do you think, man? Like, what was your personal experience, what being at the show? I mean, obviously, you guys had a ton of fun leading into the show. I know that we all did, right? I'm speaking for
The
you.
show was very mind blowing. It started with that party. I think that party might have been the highlight of the entire trip. It was such a surreal experience to be one of the people who's being celebrated at this luxurious like party.
Mm.
And the to see like Jim and I, we snuck a picture with Liberatore and Milo Manara, and like they were just next to us and they started drawing on a tablecloth, and I just tapped Liberatore. He doesn't know. I just tap him on the shoulder and I'm like holding up my phone for a selfie, and then Jim scuttles behind me and I was like, tap Manara, Milo, and so he taps it, and then they look in the camera and they smile huge like we're all friends, and I got a great picture.
Photo too. It is an unbelievable photo.
It's unreal.
Fantastic.
But
And,
just,
and not to interrupt you, Sean, but when we got back to our Airbnb that night, Sean and I were just like peeking out of our bedroom doors at each other, like, dude, fucking Monera and Liberatore, like what? And then
it was mind blowing. But we went from, and earlier in the night, like Jim said, we were in line with Kevin Eastman and Simon Bisley talking to them. So if I forgot that I'm a working professional artist and just became that kid who dreamed of being a professional artist, because all the people, all the artists I was looking at and studying and in love with their work, they were guests of this show. So in a way, I understand what you're saying. Like I didn't feel like I was like part of that. But then I'd see some more contemporary artists, and you're like, oh, okay, I'm part of this. I'm part of this. But
Right.
but the party was just so amazing and out there. We went upstairs, and we ended up. No, actually, it was outside where we were eating. We ended up on that balcony outside. Me, you, and Mateo, and Aaliyah was with us. And I just kind of like leaned over to Jim. I was like it's nighttime. You're on the water. You see the city lights in the mountains off in the distance, and it's just like, Jim, we got to remember that our cartoons brought us here, and that for me was like that party. And then the con was just mind blowing. I mean, just the room we were in was blowing my mind. To see Kevin Eastman celebrated the way he was gave me, restored so much faith in me in terms of this medium and this industry, that just to see someone who was an independent cartoonist who created their own thing with another artist, and it blew up huge, and he's still celebrated for that. Like that was really special to see. And then Art Adams is in the room with us, and of course I never take for granted that Eric's next to me, and he's one of my all-time favorite artists. And looking through Aaliyah's portfolio, and watching Mateo just sell art like it's fucking hotcakes. But then leaving the room, there were some rooms I'd go into, like for example, Javier Fernandez comes into the room. I've never met him. We follow each other on Instagram and like each other's shit. And he DM'd me once asking like what sort of table I use, and I never met him. But he comes in the room with a page to just give to me, this beautiful Spawn page. And so we traded, but just shit like that. So I stumble into a room of these Spanish artists, and I'm just like, whoa, this is amazing.
Yeah.
It's like artists you've never heard of, who aren't like big name artists. There's a few I just stopped and watched them paint or draw. They were incredible.
Yeah.
And it was just like, this is just a celebration of art, and that made the show very, very different than any show I've ever done.
Yeah, to be clear, just because we haven't heard of them doesn't mean they're not celebrated elsewhere. We're just,
I mean,
we're in a bubble. You know what I mean?
In our little bubble,
Like,
exactly.
yeah, I had this similar experience to you, Sean, where it was great being in the room with us, but I see you, jabronis fucking every convention that we go to. I'm like, I'm kind of sick of hanging out with you guys. So I like going into those spaces where like, I don't know any of these people, and that's obviously a failure on me, but it does not diminish the quality and level of their work. I went in there and I was like, man, oh man, I am so like, again, in that bubble of just knowing who I know. but I'm so glad that I know this now. And if there is one thing that I can say like I fell short of is number one, jotting down their names really, really quick because I love doing this now. Like I like seeing artwork that's out there that's not within sort of our sphere of hanging out with people, the same exact people that you see at these shows, right? Again, not throwing shade at those guys, but you see them almost every year, every show that we go to. Not jotting down their names and then ultimately finding the thing that they work on and supporting them. Because in as much as I love like having a piece of original art, which would be great, which is the theme of the show. Go support these artists by buying some of their original work. What
Yeah.
I really like is having that art in context, right? And oftentimes that comes in a form of like a comic book or a zine or like a hardcover or something like that. Like that's what if the show wasn't themed around that. So rare did you ever see a person with books on the table
Right.
that represents their sequential work or whatever it was. But man, I should have jotted down a bunch of their names and be like, okay,
Sure.
let me go look up these books later on, because
Yeah.
I would love to see it in context of how to do their storytelling, how to do their panel layouts. Because again, not just was it a celebration of the artist, but obviously the fact that they work in that industry. There were even at the high, like I was thinking of a couple of high end sort of like that's nowhere near affordable to me. Like there's no way I could be able to do that. But still, at the end of the day, I'm thinking specifically of somebody like the guys who represent Alex Ross and their original art, Bill Sienkiewicz and their original art. Like they still did sequential artwork, which
Right.
I think if you don't have to squint that hard to realize, oh, most, if not all of these people do sequential art. It's just that this happens to be a convention to buy original art.
Right.
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 That
There's
was
never
so much fun to
been
see.
there's never been a more dramatic time of the level of talent that's in the scene now. In
Yeah,
comics, in
yeah,
illustration, there's never I mean, the amount of talent that's out there now in the world, and even at American conventions, but having a highly concentrated dose of it, like, in 2 days in Italy at Como is, like, overwhelming, but it was also, like, a shock to my system in a good way where I'm like,
yeah,
"Okay, as soon as I get home and I'm rested up, I'm ready to get back to the studio to
Me
make
too.
art."
Charge me up.
Like, it was to even be part of that or even be considered to be part of that experience and to see the level of talent that's out there, it's like, "Damn, I guess I'm part of this whole scene and I've earned
yeah,
my
dude.
place. Let's not take that for granted. Let's not screw that up. Let's just keep
Mhm.
making work and
Yeah,
and keep the excitement going because even though all of us have this great friend group, we can inspire each other. Day to day, most of us are alone in our studios, and we have to
sure.
come up with that energy inside of us to be like, okay, it's time to work for 8 hours. It's time to keep this machine going, and a trip like this can reignite that in me for the next like 6 months or
Oh,
so.
for sure.
Totally.
There
Totally.
was a contingent in there, and I'm gonna say like of the legendary tier of the people that you were talking about, like the Minaras or Pierres, like I those guys just did the work. There was no version of them that was
Right.
like social media. There was no version of them that was hung up on like hype. There's no version of them that's just like, you know, in the orbit of the kind of stuff that artists today are always in their periphery. How do I make sure there's awareness for my work? How do I
Right.
make sure that I'm relevant in this ever-changing landscape that has an influx of new artists almost on the daily, if not on the hourly?
Right. Right.
They just did the work and they somehow became who they are, the legends that they are.
Yeah.
And that was my big takeaway. And I was like, oh, we can do the social media dance. We can do the secret handshakes that get us into, exclusive circles A, B, and C. But at the end of the day, you still need to do this work, right?
Absolutely.
And I think that's something that gets lost in a lot of people. And especially, again, not to diminish the people who just do the one or two pinups once in a great, great while. I'm talking about the people who actually do sequential work because I think that's where these guys are the exemplar. These guys are if tomorrow aliens came and plucked, some of the people that we were hanging out with at that show as the representatives of like the DNA that moves on to the next rebuilding of a planet and I'm not chosen, I wouldn't give a shit. Right. Like they'd go like, oh, we're gonna pick, these specific guys, this legendary tier of guys, but the rest of you, we're just gonna laser you guys out of existence. I'll be like, go ahead. That's amazing. Because number one, they're the best that we have. They're the best, one of the best representations that we have. And number two, they're really, really freaking good at it. So yeah, go take Manara, go freaking clone the hell out of Manara and inject the DNA into the next generation, because they're really focused on comics. They're really focused on doing the thing that got us in that room to begin with. Some of us may have lost. I mean, I'll speak for myself. Sometimes I lose track of that. Like, oh yeah, the thing that got me into the entertainment industry, even though I don't work exclusively in comics, was comics.
Yeah.
So when I'm exposed to a lot of it, especially when I'm flipping through original art, in those portfolios that they were selling, I was like, geez, Louise, how amazing is this? How amazing of a legacy that these guys leave. And they're in a completely different continent. They're across an ocean, and yet it's so relatable to me to be like, all right, this is the stuff that got me into this to begin with.
Totally, absolutely.
Just incredible.
All right, that's an hour and some odd. We led into it. We led into it a little bit when I started the recording early. I hope Shawn edits some of it, because you guys did some unsavory shit, in that green room before we went quote unquote live.
Edit as necessary, Shawn.
Terrible.
Yeah,
I will.
By the way, we talked about why Mateo couldn't be here. I think Mateo is pretty much done. I think he's gonna go and do his own podcast now. He's
going out on his own.
He's gonna do it on his own. He's gonna bring his paid-for bots and launch his own career.
I think we can be honest with the fans now, because Mateo and I were honest with the fans when you couldn't make it. You were on your deathbed.
Yeah.
Mateo is dead. He's gone.
Yeah.
And
did I upset Mateo? Did I outstay my welcome? Where he's like, I'm not.
It's all you, Jim.
I'm not doing it.
You know what? What he saw, Jim, was the implied homosexual photos that you and Shawn were taking the entire show, and the level of jealousy that it must be just boiling inside of him.
I know.
Where he's like, oh, those used to be my accidentally implied situations, with Shawn, and Jim comes in with basically the same cosplay as me.
I know.
Beard, dark skin. The only difference is that you bring Hawaiian shirts and glasses into the mix.
Right.
The
other thing too is that might have turned him off is I was also the only one crazy enough to give him art as a gift, because everyone else, I gave Mateo in Parma a gift. During COVID, we were doing those inking videos on Shawn's YouTube on the INKPULP.
Sure.
I inked one of Mateo's drawings, and I added color and all these crazy psychedelic backgrounds to it, and I gave the original to him in Parma the last day we were in town. In a hotel room. And he of course thanked me. I was like, I wanted you to have this original. But everyone else I talked to during that trip, all the other artists were like, we're not giving artwork to Mateo. He's like the best. Like, you can't give the best guy your art. Everyone felt very sheepish about it.
I feel that.
Well, I think I agree with you in the part where it's like, oh, we're not going to give art to Mateo. I didn't give him art, but I think it's only because it would be wasted on him. You know what I mean? Like, if I gave him originals, he just wouldn't know what to do with it. Like, he is just in this simple, like, color paint by the numbers phase in his career right now. And it's effectively like a guy who just barely understands like puzzles that are like limited pieces, like 8-piece puzzle pieces. And he's really celebrating the fact that he can put those 8 pieces together very, very quickly. And then I go in there and give him like a fucking the 100,000 Lego pieces to build something. He just wouldn't like, it's wasted on him is what I'm saying. I can give him that toy, but he'll just slop around in it and just be admiring the colors, not really realizing there's a 3-dimensionality to it that he can't quite preserve. So you're very kind, It was a kind
gesture, but for me, it's like, what do you get the guy who already has everything, basically? He has a wonderful girl, a kid, a beautiful home, state-of-the-art studio. He's like the #1 talent in comics right now. It's like, what do I get this guy other than I thought as a joke, like next time he comes to America, it'd be hilarious if I got him like the most American gift you could give someone. Like, I just bought you a gun, Mateo, or I bought you
Yeah.
like some fishing gear, or like a Bass Pro Shop hat, or some crazy shit that he
You
can't
know
even.
he'd love it. If
He
you
can't
got
even
him that Bass
he
Pro
can't even
Shop
bring it
hat,
back
he'd
to
love it.
Italy. He's like, you bought me a gun, but just the gesture, the look on his face would be worth. Because I don't know what else to get this guy as a thank you. You know,
No,
it
I mean, I think what, if anything else, you know, jokes aside, he just really appreciated our company. I know that anytime that he can get a moment to go and talk to, you know, just us and just be as chill as possible in those situations. I know that he loves those hangout things. So we may
100%.
joke a lot. We may sort of just like, you know, we make fun of his currently like train wreck of an accident career because he's just making all the wrong professional choices when it comes to his art. We may make fun of that, but at the end of the day, really, really good guy. And I can't imagine going to that country and him rolling out the carpet for us and making us feel as comfortable as he possibly can
Totally. Yeah. Rest
while
in
we were there. So
rest in peace.
I think that's the gift that you give him. You just laid out all of the things that he's responsible for, but I think he just needs eternal sleep. And I think Shawn accommodated him, you
Laid him to
know? So
rest.
yeah, Shawn killed him, you know, for the investigators looking for Mateo Scalera's murderer. He's right here. So Shawn, put
right.
your address in the freaking description so that the freaking international cops can come and get you. Did you go grab something? Are you gonna put up like a thing on the screen that I
There it
put up?
is. There it is. I've got one too. The little espresso that
We
wouldn't
were in
fit.
such a good place. This is 2 episodes now. The previous one where I had to cut Mateo off in order to save him from himself. He was he was talking about, I think it was as close to, if you read between the lines, Mateo's fascination with like underage children. I think that was it. I don't want to mess him up or anything, but there was like some level of pedophilia that was involved. I'm not saying that that's what he was getting at, but I was like, I'm going to save you from yourself and hit this, you know, this closing bumper.
Right.
And now Shawn is just so simple right now. He just went back. All right, we gotta go. This is it. We're an hour 20. I'm gonna hit this thing now. Thanks, Jim. Thank you for sharing time.
You guys, thank you for having me, and it was
We
a
got
pleasure and honor and so fun to kick it with you guys for 2 weeks
Definitely.
in another country, especially
we're,
Italy.
we're doing that again, I suspect, elsewhere in some other time, right?
But
So
let's go for it. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. Thanks for saving Mateo's ass with this episode by stepping in, by the way. You are just an Italian accent away from being exactly like him. And I'll tell you this, Shawn does not feel comfortable being in the room with a guy who's like head is shaven and like, you know, no beard and mustache. So the fact that you're here makes like it
I
gives
know.
Shawn to almost look into a mirror and go, hey, that's me. Like that's where he's like his simple brain goes. Like I feel like I'm talking to myself, you know. So thanks for being here, Jim,
My
in lieu of
pleasure, of
Mateo.
course. Yeah.
Let's do this again some other time. Here goes the bumper.
Definitely.
This is the INKPULP podcast. This is the INKPULP podcast. Comics, hip hop, life.